Hello, hello. This is the September 10th SIG Node meeting. Uh, Welcome, everyone. I think we're going to start by doing a little bit of planning for 132. There are a handful of agenda items, so maybe we spend, I don't know, half meeting or something doing planning and then uh, continue on with the topics. What do folks think?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And thank you everybody who doing pre-work for this. We have board in very good shape right now.
Yeah, totally. So there's two different sort of views we can like take a look at here that show the different stages. So here's, I think this is easier to sort of look through, like, look holistically, and then here we can hammer down into the different sort of roles. So I'm realizing forgot to put together the Wrangler team. So I'll have to do that outside of this meeting. But what I was thinking of starting with today is making sure that the triage and draft stage is in the correct state. So we have like, or rather triage and not for release, like make sure we've disqualified everything and then sort of in a more dedicated time, look through the proposed for consideration and like concretely assign approvers, reviewers, and like discuss whether or not it's a piece of item that we want to work. So we have, so I guess to begin going through the triage. So these are the ones that we have yet to say concretely we are or are not working on them. So if, I guess to begin, if anyone thinks that, I guess we can go through one by one, but if anyone sees any issue with any of these, you could speak up. But so this has been open. We had a KEP merged, but it doesn't look like it succeeded in making it to alpha. Does anyone know the state of this one on the call?
Maybe Dawn.
Yeah, let me get back to, I follow up with the team because this is proposed by the SIG network. I will follow up with the owner and
Okay,
update
cool.
offline.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. No, you're fine. Is Ruin on the call? We got parallel image polls. This one's kind of languished for a while.
So the status of this cap is that we almost G8. We have a test, but test flaky. So right now we mostly blocked by the fact that we cannot write a very good test with tools that we have currently. And the idea right now is to write test with some proxy CRI API layer that will emulate some behavior and like delays on image pool. I think Paco was looking into that and he may take it. I don't think Raven will be working on that.
Okay. So maybe we can see. I haven't heard anything from either of them. So maybe we
Yeah,
can see if
Paco
Paco
commented
chimes in.
on a related PR with test like maybe a week or two ago. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So would you say that we are considering this then?
Only if Paco will be taking it, but I cannot comment for Paco. Like I would say we
Okay.
considering, but given that it's like it's super easy. Like I mean, on the surface you just need to write tests, but writing tests
Right.
will not be trivial task.
Devil is in the details.
Yes, we suppose to commit on this one. I believe a lot of people, a lot of production already enable this, even it's not yeah.
It's very similar with graceful termination. People using graceful termination a lot in production. It's like perma beta at this point, but it's still in beta.
Totally.
So whoever on a call and looking for a contribution, this will be a very interesting contribution to make.
Cool. We've got this CPU manager policy option that had gone to alpha and is just sort of sitting there, I think. Francesco, are you on the call?
I am. Hello. Unfortunately, I don't know about the plans for this one, so I cannot really say.
It's from
Okay.
Kevin.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Kevin. Is Kevin around? So maybe
We can ask him
follow
on
up
Slack.
offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Sounds good. So that's still in triage state. Authenticated
For alpha
mirror
features like
support.
that, for alpha features like that, at some point we need to discuss whether we need to remove them, because more
Right.
alpha features is not healthy.
Yeah, I agree. We can either we should move it forward or we should sort of drop it. We're not planning on doing anything with it. I agree. Cool. And then finally, the authenticated registry mirror support. So Sasha,
I think Marlo raised her hand. Maybe she has something on the previous one.
oh, sorry, missed that. Hello?
Hi. Yeah, on the previous one, I had done a cap like a couple years ago around getting some of that CPU management intricacy out of Kubelet and doing a pluggable model. And partially because we keep getting stuff like this in there and it's always alpha. And I'm background, I'm at SCEDMD working on integrating Slurm into Kubernetes, and the lack of granular ability for CPU management is an issue for us. So we're trying to see a way forward that we can do that. But I suspect the patterns we're looking at are very similar to Kevin's, what Kevin needs for his systems as well.
Yeah, Malo, and yeah, this is important. I just share with John here, sit here. This is important. So we need to move forward. Let's follow up with Kevin and then also connect you with Kevin. How about that to make sure your requirement also to enable after slumps and can be addressed. At least we figure out a plan. Maybe not in the same cap, but we figure out a plan to address your request.
Yeah, my request would be to drop this one, to be honest, and do something that's a
Okay.
little more general so that we can do pluggable stuff, because even this is limited in its capabilities. And when you look at some of the newer chip architectures, they still have tiles with NUMA nodes. And then if you add the power stuff where things are shared caching, like we're just going to be playing whack-a-mole with this sort of thing. That's all.
Okay, there's the other ongoing effort to talk about the NRI. So maybe we can connect you with the folks like the Alexander, maybe here or not here. And there's the some we can talk to each other. Yeah.
I've looked
Yeah,
at
we talked in
NRI.
the past.
Yeah, I've looked at NRI in the past, and it needs too much admin control in order to get the level of granularity we're looking at. So Tyrus has a question.
Yeah, my question is, so your proposal is to do a refactoring of CPU manager to make it more pluggable?
Yeah, we had a pluggable model. Like there's a couple ways I can see us going forward with that, which is either to do a pluggable model for native resources or to pull them out entirely and basically have the options of doing DRA or NRI.
Okay, because this refactoring, I think there is also discussions how we can improve the testing in CPU manager, because currently I believe it's not doing a lot of tests. So I think it sounds good, but I think it's a big discussion, the refactoring. So it should also cover testing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I had spoken with a different working group, and we were talking about starting a document as far as changing the internal kubelet native resource management, which again is either pull it out entirely and have people use either NRI or DRA and making sure that those can handle it. Although DRA, I'm a little worried about as far as complexity to the scheduler, or finding a pluggable model here directly.
Marla, one question. Do your requirements, so right now, this is managed on a node level and not a workload level. And is that satisfactory for your requirements, or would like DRA works at a workload level, not at a node level? And so, you know, that's a substantial more flexibility when it's at the workload level, although you run into, you know, multi-tenancy problems. So I'm just curious where your requirements land.
They're at both levels. Frankly, if you can get me node level, we can easily handle the workload level because that's what Slurm does, is handle the workload level. You're still going to have the restrictions with DRA as far as scaling for the scheduler, because because the way Slurm works is it does a whole bunch of bit masking and munching internally and then does the workload scheduling, which is a lot faster than the additive scheduler model that we do with Kubernetes. Just by the nature of how the problem space is reduced.
Right. And so what I was thinking about specifically is, right, at the Kubernetes level, you have to target a node label basically in order to use CPU manager today, as opposed to being able to flexibly, you know, have one node that maybe you have one policy for this workload and a different policy for a different workload, right, on the same node. That's kind of what I'm talking about by the workload level and the node level from a Kubernetes layer perspective. I don't know if that matters to you at all.
I think it would in some cases, because some of the requests we're getting are mixed workloads.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Where you'll have a large one and then you're bin packing your nodes.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And if you have one policy for the whole node, you can't bin pack anything.
Yeah,
other than
I don't want a single policy per node. So
Yeah.
Some of the work I had done at Intel with the CPU control plane we had a mix and we had a much better utilization of the node. The utilization of the nodes with Kubernetes plane is not great,
Right.
which
Makes
I think Sasha's NRI stuff does similar issues.
Right. That's one way to address it. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So maybe in the interest of sort of scoping this conversation, maybe folks can sort of collaborate offline on a document and present it here, and we can sort of discuss. I'm going to guess that the larger rewrite might struggle to make it into 132 at this stage, unless it does rely on other, like if it's sort of bolted on top of DRA and we can sort of scope it well there, then that might happen. But you know, we can definitely, you know, give it a shot and try to sort of go through the process, and that does help inform whether or not we want to carry along an alpha feature like this, or if we want to you know, abandon it and go for a different approach for those.
My goal is to limit complexity going forward, and if we continue to add in features like this, it's not helping the community because now you have to maintain it. So finding another model, I think, is probably better for everybody.
Totally. Yeah, and this has definitely been something that's been discussed for a while. I just think we haven't had the energy to sort of make it happen. Cool. Well, we can leave this in triage, and sort of, you know, these offline conversations can happen, and we can sort of come back together about it in the coming weeks. Circling back to the authenticated registry piece. So this one would actually, I would even consider to be in draft stage, really. But there's a little bit of conversation about it. But so do we think that we should move this into proposed then, if it, maybe we'll get some energy on it?
It really depends on whether somebody will be working on that. It's a good feature. I think there is a need for it, but it's not urgent by any means, at least not what I saw. And just that proposed is not ideal. I don't know. We may not get to that unless there's somebody dedicated working on this.
Totally.
Let's check with Sasha if he can write up an announcement and flesh it a
I
bit.
think that there's something written up. I don't know how fleshed out. Yeah, it seems to be decently fleshed out. I don't know.
Okay. I can make
Sort
a
of, I
pass
think,
at
language.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, my comment based
Cool.
on this write-up from Sasha.
Cool. All right. So those are our triage, so that's cool. So we have a couple to follow up on. And maybe we just comb through and make sure that there's none in not for release that we do actually want to work on. And then maybe we yield the floor to to some of the other topics. So just sort of poking through these. This one's
Yeah, this one
Sergey.
is moving very slowly. It's between SIG node and SIG testing. I will try to eliminate some node features tags, but there is a little bit more than that. So I don't think it's for this release. I don't want to commit on moving stage.
Totally. Cool. Sounds good. Declarative node maintenance. I think it's this one seems to be sort of stuck in figuring out a direction. So that seems like the correct state. Seems like we're still sort of discussing. Plus, there was also, from my understanding, this was in part a sort of replacement for Graceful Shutdown, or like a different way of going about Graceful Shutdown. And it seems like there's some renewed interest in Graceful Shutdown. So it's possible we may move over with that instead of this. But
Yeah, I think one possible solution to Graceful, I think Clayton had a doc with all the things to be fixed in Graceful node shutdown. So I think that can still go ahead. So it's not blocked on this one.
yeah, totally. Cool. Max restart times to pod spec. This one, we just haven't heard from the author in a while. So haven't triaged this enough for release, which I think is accurate. If the author wants to come forward and work on this.
Yeah, I mean, and this can also fold into the work I think Laura was bringing up around changing how we back off.
Yeah, back off. Yes.
Yeah.
This is actually, it is the next stage after the current proposal, right? So, yeah.
Totally. QBitGC. So actually, we chatted. There was a little bit of comments on this somewhere. Oh no, this one, not this one. So this one, this just went to beta 2 releases ago. So this is the earliest that it could qualify for GA. I don't think that there is anyone using it yet. We meant to use it in OpenShift and didn't get around to it yet. So I think probably we need some more end user feedback before we actually push for GA. So I figure just wait.
Yeah, and the most interesting question there is, what is the default value? Like, what would be the recommended value?
Yeah.
So maybe
and that's actually the very reason we didn't go for it in OpenShift, is we haven't had the time to figure that out.
Yeah, so maybe design a little bit of change if we cannot come up with a value.
Yeah. Cool. Here. Aiming capabilities. I know that one has sort of languished for a bit. Yeah, so so there is a comment here from Paco asking if we should think about this. But I think we would need a champion to do it. So we would need someone to volunteer.
Do we have a pressing use case right now? I think I'll have to refresh on what the status of ambient capabilities is.
Yeah, my understanding is there are some cases that like people would find use in, but I don't think that it's like a need, because you can always just sort of add them to the bounding set.
I think the one related to ping was solved by the sysctl, right? So that one is already there. I can make a pass at this one to see.
Cool. CRI logging. Yeah, this actually seems like a documentation problem. Yes, okay. So I mentioned that. I don't think that this actually should be a feature. I might follow up offline on this and see if we can sort of get this closed and off of the board.
Yeah, let's move to
SIG
regular
oh,
issue.
yeah, totally. SIG driver from CRI. I think this just went to beta, and also we don't yet have Containerd 2.0 isn't out yet, so we don't actually have broad runtime support yet. It's in, but it's not yet like broad. So yeah, not this one. Deprecating the Q proxy version. I think this also, yes.
Is it driven by us or
Yeah.
by SIG network?
I think it's networking mostly. We're just sort of watching it, but I also don't think it's
Maybe
going to make any progress.
have a separate column for that, like SIG Node consulting or something. Some
Yeah,
deviated.
yeah, totally. I saw that, but I think we would put it not in this release because I don't even think SIG networking is doing anything with it. I think they're pushing for 133. So we'll put it into that column for 133. I think.
Opportunity crash for past reckons.
Cool. Couple more. Ephemeral storage. This just went to beta, and I think we just need more users to sort of to adopt it and try it out. So I would say nothing there. Recursive read only, I think, is in a similar, or no, wait, did it make it to beta? Well, Akihiro isn't planning on making it. Yeah, so we're waiting on another release. Same there. And then we have forensic container checkpointing, which is in beta, the first step of it. Oh yeah, the like checkpointing piece.
We're still discussing about Containerd implementation, right? We need
Yeah.
to get Mike Brown on the same page, and I don't know if anybody pushing forward on that.
Right. Yeah, and I'm guessing, yeah, so maybe we wait on this also for GA of Containerd.
Yeah, I heard about also possible GPU related use cases here. I'll check with folks from NVIDIA.
Yeah, though I think that would maybe even require a new KEP because we have yet to really even touch restore. So like checkpointing piece, that's practically done, but the restore piece I think needs more love. So we might actually have a new KEP for that.
The menu, there's when we sponsor this project at the SIG Node, because we try to make that is only node, right? Client is only node feature because we want to have some user, because we also have the concrete use cases, right? So I remember there's testing, there's qualification, there's some other use cases I remember from customer, from the OpenShift customer. I forgot exactly.
Yeah. So the forensic checkpointing is the one I think that we try to.
Yeah. So I just want to see, do we have the feedback?
We still have to enable it.
When we think about, we want to have the proper API, not just current way, right? So current way, we basically just capture in the SIG node, only node available, like the tryout feature. Then we said, okay, let's have some feedback loop and inputs. Then we enhanced, and then we decided, do we need to make that build a proper user-facing API to enable this feature? I remember when I talk about the first Tuesday sponsored project, that's what we agree. Do we have that enough? Do we got anyone to feedback, or what? Or do we need to kick out the discussing?
No, we are still trying to roll it out on the OpenShift side. I think, and the challenge really, Don, is same, right? Like we don't have an API, so we have to build something to expose it through an API. So it's kind of becoming like a chicken and egg here. So I think forensic checkpointing is one. The other one is like faster startup for things like JVM, where you can checkpoint after a startup and see if you can start a bunch of copies. So those use cases remain valid, but yeah, we are still working on a way to enable it.
Got. Maybe we can, if you want, maybe we can discuss potential. At least we have some like the skeleton. We think about potential of the API. So I think
Yeah,
nice
I
to
think
build.
that may be useful, right? Like to even have an alpha to make it easier to consume.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else there? So that we just went through the triage and not for release columns, which I think sets us up for maybe if we dedicate like the full of next week to, and probably the week after, to this actual planning. We should probably, you know, be focusing on it in earnest because we're you know, quarter of the way through the cap season. John?
I didn't see the pod resource limit. And is there any plan for that one?
So I think that's in the draft stage, right?
I even didn't find it from draft. Maybe it's my fault. Okay.
No, maybe it's in proposed for consideration, actually.
There is a handy filter thingy.
Probably. Hot.
It's on the
Pod
consideration.
level, I think. Yeah, the middle
There we
pod
go,
level.
yeah,
resource
so we're in
limit.
proposed
Okay,
for consideration.
thank
there.
you. Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about that next week so we can do maybe some of the agenda items. All right.
Yeah, everybody,
Laura,
if
you're up
you
first.
move it to propose to consideration because this is what we will be looking next week.
Can I get
Right.
co-host?
You can. If I remember how to do it. Or if someone else beats me to it. There we go.
I'm in, thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, hi. I wanted to do a picture version of what is going on, what the plan is for Crash Loop Backoff for 132. This is linked in a larger deck that includes some pre-materials and post-materials with information from 131 and also the overall thing, but I'm going to zoom in here on slides 6 through 10, I think it is. And this is what the 132 plan is right now. In short, over here, the idea is to provide 2 alpha gate, again, this is for alpha. So 2 gated changes. A lot of it is about getting feedback and also get to slide this into some of the periodic scalability tests on top of the manual benchmarking that I've been doing. Those 2 changes are 1, a knob to cluster operators at the node level. This is different from 131, which is was about giving that power to at the workload level in the pod manifest or even to the application developer in the form of the application's exit code. And then still also make default changes to the crash loop backoff curve that are similar in range to the ones that were already proposed for 131. So the bigger difference from 131 is this item, but overall the changes from like today's behavior encapsulates both of these. As part of it, and as a matter of kind of like how this also will take effect in the code, this will formally split image pull backoff and container restart backoff behavior. Today, they share the same hard-coded minimums in like the kubelet code. So I'll be splitting them since one of them will now be exposed as configurable in this knob for cluster operators side. And separately, there's been other conversation both in this meeting, I think last week or maybe some other week, and also on the various issues that image pull backoff can operate in sort of like a different backoff environment if we wanted to like tackle image pull backoff separately, since those are usually more deterministic in terms of, or at least how to say, interpretable in terms of why an error is happening and how we could recover from it, as opposed to blanket crash loop backoff, which is about failing applications, which could be for any reason at all. Over here is specific numbers. So this knob to cluster operators would be a kubelet config. They would be able to configure what the max backoff is to a minimum of 1 second. For example, they could say that for this node, all of the pods on it, if in crash loop backoff, will max out at 10 seconds. Inside kubelet, how this will also change, this is trying to represent this default changes thing, is that the backoff period will start at 1 second instead of 10 seconds like it does today. And the max container backoff will end at 30 seconds instead of 5 minutes like it does today. And again, image backoff will be split out. Here's a quick picture form if you like pictures and colors like I do. In the code, basically it looks like this right now, where the backoff period again is shared by both images and containers and starts at 10 seconds. Today, all nodes would have this same crash loop backoff time that starts at 10 seconds and ends at 6 minutes, 300 seconds. That's also represented by this gray line here. So this is what the backoff curve looks like for something that's continuously crashing and just looping. So this is like seconds over here over time. So today, all nodes operate in this gray land. What I am suggesting is a purple and yellow land instead, where purple is this new default. So this is all crash looping containers would start at 1 second backoff instead and max out at 30 seconds. So you can see that this curve gets a little flatter and longer hockey stick here. And this orange here is the minimum that I would allow for a cluster operator to configure an individual node. So all of the pods on that node could be as low as a 1 second max. So this would be starting at 1 second, maxing out at 1 second. So kind of like always taking 1 second between restart requests. Here's just a little bit more detail up here of how this needs to be affected in the code, and I think also motivates the point of image backoff now fully becomes like a separate, like hard-coded set that again can be handled separately and out of scope of this cap, whereas container restarts get to be changed to orange, purple, or whatever we decide in 132. I do have one slide here about 133 plus that I will mention if I have a little bit of time, but I want to take Sergey's question first.
Just clarification. I think
Yeah.
also have a logic that resets backoff timer back to minimum after
We do.
twice maximum
Yes.
period. Is it also be controlled by the same setting?
Sorry, say the very last part again.
So today it's twice 5 minutes.
Right.
When somebody
Yes.
configures to 5 seconds or 10 seconds, it will be twice 10 seconds, right?
Right.
To
Or
reset.
I guess twice 30 seconds. Twice the maximum.
Okay, twice the max. Okay. I mean, if you can just write it down somewhere. It'll
Sure,
be...
I'll write that down. I'll include it in
Yeah.
the picture so that we can like include that in the thought process. Good question though. Yeah, I did.
That policy is important for
Yep.
customers. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's like the overall. Again, we can talk more about this through this period and on the KEP, but I wanted to like have the picture version and share that for visibility. And lastly, just want to touch point on this again, which has also been a continual thread throughout this process, that there's lots of other things that want to add more restarts, or at least just like resource usage against kubelet, like sub-second probes or being able to restart the backoff counter or stuff like that. Today, these don't have a priority, so it's just like by order of request basically, or once the loop gets to it and once the sync pod loop can finish achieving its eventual consistency. There is some interest, as I've gathered over the period of talking about this, in approaching that more from a priority and fairness perspective, and that is still my interest longer term. So let this slide be the representation of that, and that I'm still keeping an eye on that, especially with the other things mentioned up here that would probably be in that same bucket. If you or a friend have something that you think will increase load on kubelet and would benefit from being represented in a priority and fairness queue so that people could configure what is best for their kubelet to actually work on at a given time, please talk to me. I want to talk to you. I would like to cede my time to my fellows if there's no further questions. Thank you.
Sweet, thank you. Next up, we have Harshal.
Yeah, hi. I'm just looking for the review on that PR. Few meetings ago, we spoke about how we are not able to provision adequate amount of system reserve on the node, and especially affects systems with high number of CPUs. And we talked about it in detail. So based on the discussion in that meeting in SIG Node, I created this PR, and I just wanted to bring this to attention here so that we can get more eyes on it and get it reviewed. That's all.
Cool, thank you. Tim.
I have a question on system reserved. I wonder, like, system reserved has very interesting note about it, saying be cautious when you configure it. Be sure that you configure the right values. Do we know many vendors who are using that?
Do you mean to say if we know that if the
Yes, we're
vendors
using
are
that, and I have a KRP to fix the current behavior. It is maybe in the proposed column.
Okay, so my question was mostly how much use we have on system reserved and whether we can get more feedback from people actually using that actively.
Sergey, was that question for me?
If you know a lot of usage, yes.
Yeah, so we have a lot of customers who have systems quite big, you would say, in terms of number of CPUs that they have. These typically tend to be on-prem customers who have their own hardware. But yeah, so these customers quite often complain to us that even after system reserve have been set adequately, they frequently observe that the kubelet and cryo in our case runs out of CPU, and it was very bad when we were using C group V1, and with C group V2 it's still bad, but it's better than C group V1, because if you remember in my presentation I showed that in C group V2, even if you're making mistake, you still end up with 2.5 CPUs for the node. So you kind of get shielded there, but nevertheless it's incorrect value. So we do have customers who quite often complain about it, but you would not see this issue if let's say if you're not using something like below 60 number of CPU vCPUs on your node and you're using C group V2, you'll still get about 2.2 to 2.5 CPUs for your system reserve, and the original problem could get masked. But as you start increasing the CPUs on your node, then even C group V2 will start reaching its threshold, because it doesn't move beyond 2.5 vCPU. So I think it's important that we address this issue as people are moving towards more and more bigger machines. It might be helpful to them, and nevertheless, beyond everything else, it's just incorrect way of doing things as it is today. So
yeah, I remember discussion. Just wondering if this is definitely fixing the situation, and we can have validation or we can have more feedback. But thank you for clarification.
Sure, thank you.
Alrighty, any other comments on that?
No comment. I remember we agree. This is the approach. At least we start from the hashes share the spreadsheet, right? So and the testing result. So this is what we will agree. For now, maybe not perfect, but at least this is start point for us to help address this problem.
Thank you.
Alrighty, Tim.
All right, thanks. I have some slides to present. You can share them or you can give me co-host.
I'll give you co-host. There you are.
All right. All right, can everyone see this?
Yep.
So yeah, in-place pod resize, we're proposing to go to beta in 132. There's a lot of work to do here, so there will be a lot of changes that need to happen to hit that code freeze deadline. There's a KEP update out today, an open PR that's under discussion. And I just wanted to highlight some of the changes being proposed in that. And then talk through a few of the ones that I expect to be a little more contentious. So this is a brief summary of kind of all the big changes proposed in that KEP, and we'll go through them in a little more detail, time allowing. So first I want to talk about the version skew behavior. So the original KEP proposed that the kubelet would reject any resize proposals if in-place pod resize was disabled, so feature gate disabled. This is important. The version skew behavior here we're talking about is the features enabled in the API server and disabled in the kubelet. And so we expect to hit that scenario during that upgrade window when the API server is upgraded to a version running beta where it's default enabled, and the kubelet's still on an older version where the feature is in alpha and default disabled. So the original KEP proposed that in that disabled state, the kubelet would just reject any resize requests. However, this was never implemented. And so the current behavior that we have is prior to version 131, a resized container would cause the container hash to change, which would cause the kubelet to automatically restart the container, and then it would just pick up those new resource values. The hash computation was changed in 131 to only look at specific fields. That's image, and I can't remember what else is included in there. So in 131, with in-place resize disabled, the resize is ignored unless the container is restarted for any other reason, like a probe fails or something. Then on restart, it will use that new value. I think this behavior is particularly problematic because there's no way to tell from the API which size is being used by the container currently. So the proposed change to deal with this is to extend the API validation to look at this status, the container status resources field on running containers. So for a running container, kubelet will always set this field. Even for best effort pods, which don't set any resources, this will still be set to a non-nil empty object. And so this is a reliable signal on running containers that the kubelet supports in-place pod resize. This is a bit of a hack, but this is the only way for the API server to know if the kubelet has enabled this feature without making any kubelet changes. And so the reason we don't want to make kubelet changes to support this version skew is Kubernetes, we now support 3 versions of skew between the API server and the kubelet. And so if we had to make a kubelet change and then wait for that to roll out over that version skew period, it would delay this feature over a year. So the only way to avoid that long delay is to make some sort of change in the API server to support it. So basically what happens is the API server looks for this field on running containers, and it says, if the container is running and that field is not present, then reject the resize request. There's still some race conditions that are possible here where the resize goes through while the kubelet is in the process of starting the container, and you could end up with some kind of edge cases where you don't actually the API doesn't accurately reflect what's running. But since this is only in the version skew situation, I think those conditions are acceptable. This also, the kubelet doesn't set this field for non-running containers. And in that case, I think it's okay to just allow the resize, because then when the kubelet actually starts the container, it'll start with the new resized values. So that applies to like unscheduled containers. The alternatives we could consider are to accept the 131 behavior, which I don't think is a great option, as already mentioned, or delay for a year, which I'd also rather avoid. I'll pause there. Any questions on the version skew behavior? All right. So the next one I want to talk about is adding and removing resource requests and limits. So for example, maybe you have a container that sets a CPU request and limit, and you want to add in a memory limit. Today, this behavior is totally broken for a couple different reasons. If you're adding a new resource, so in this case, the case I just described, you had CPU request and limit, you're adding in some memory resources. The API will default the resize policy for memory, because that resize policy wasn't previously present. It now sets a resize policy, but that resize policy field is immutable, and so the request gets rejected. If you're adding, say, a limit, maybe there was a memory request, you're adding a limit, or also for removing a resource, that you wouldn't hit that API validation edge case, but there is some problems in the kubelet implementation that prevents this from working. So when I was writing the KEP, I was thinking about this use case and didn't see a lot of strong examples or strong use cases for allowing resources to be added and removed. I think there's potential for some edge cases. And so I was originally advocating for saying in validation, we're just going to forbid this case. So you can resize requests and limits for resources already present, but we're not going to let you kind of add and remove these. After talking it over with some folks internally, I got pushback on that. And so I'm now proposing that we fix the implementation, make resize policy immutable, and allow this case. Sergey, I see a hand.
Yeah, I supportive of implementing this behavior. It seems useful, unless it's like prohibitively expensive. My question is, think about it. Do we apply limit ranger for pod resize? Because my recollection was that limit ranger only look at pod creation and not on pod update. So I wonder if this pod resize creates a way to work around limit ranger.
There's an open issue that's marked for beta to make limit ranger work on resize.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interruption.
No problem. All right, any other questions on adding and removing resources? All right, next one, QoS class changes. So today, the behavior on resize is you're allowed to resize requests and limits as long as the computed QoS class doesn't change. So as an example, you can change your requests and limits for a burstable pod, but you cannot set the requests equal to the limits in the resize. You also can't resize a best effort pod because setting any resource request or limit would make it now fall into the burstable or guaranteed QoS class. So that's the current behavior. My proposed change is that we allow if like computed QoS class increases. So in the burstable case example that I gave, you can set your requests equal to your limits. In the best effort case, since we're allowing adding of resources, you can add requests and limits to best effort pod. What you can't do is take a guaranteed pod and make it so it's, would now fall into the burstable category. The other caveat here is that the kubelet will, on creation, checkpoint the QoS class. And then if you change the resources such that it would change the QoS class, the kubelet is still going to use and enforce that original QoS class. And any components that look at QoS class will use that original value. I believe QoS class is a field on the status. And so the kubelet will also maintain, when it writes that status, it'll maintain the original class there.
Will we change the score if we go from burstable to guaranteed, or?
The resize currently does adjust the score. Let me turn that question around to you. What do you think is the right behavior there?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that it will be confusing because I think in many places I've seen code which is looking at the pod fields to compute the QoS class.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should change the score if we are changing from burstable to guaranteed. Otherwise, we are not really giving it the behavior that other guaranteed pods have.
Mm-hmm. So the proposal here is to not actually change the QoS class.
Yeah.
So in other words, your burstable pod now has requests and limits that are the same, but it still behaves like a burstable pod.
Yeah, I agree. So we don't move the C group itself, but the behavior should be same. Like if we are changing the score and all the other attributes, so it will be treated like a guaranteed, or actually, yeah. What about evictions? Yeah.
Let me add this one. I think Manu, maybe it's not perfect, but actually largely by default, largely it is match what you want. So when we calculate off the score, we base it on the delta. And there's the several delta to consider. One, it is what's your request, what it is your real usage. And because this is the change from burstable to the guarantee, right? So we also consider about the delta between your limit and also to your request. So all is mixed as the inputs to calculate of the score. So in these cases, you improve of those kind of things, and you limit the delta between your limit and between your request and limit is 0. Also, there's your usage because you already set your request to your limit. So your request between your real usage should be elective, right? So all is a favor about your score. You will get better score. You are unlikely compared to other burstable to be evicted. Yeah. But at the end, anyway, that's kernel decision. Because sometimes kernel, when they evicted, they will figure out what's the best way to reclaim memory, right? When the node it is under pressure. So they may not exactly follow our score. But I just want to say even we don't change the C group pass. And actually, because the way we design how to calculate the score might be you get largely, right? So I just want to say that, and also I agree with the team of Claire, because if we move, then we just mean there's no clean way to move, right? So
yeah.
So that's why we have
it'll be disruptive. We can't really move it. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah.
An action item that I'll take here is to add more detail to this section in the KEP. I think I'll go through all of the places that we consider QoS class today, or effective computed QoS class, and add some detail about what the new behavior will be.
And also, Tim, because the Dixie's proposal for the pod resource limit, we have that table.
Yeah.
And that table actually, that formula can consider those kind of use cases. We didn't think about it from the resizing perspective, but we do think about, so just take a look on that one,
Okay, yeah, we'll do. I think Yuju was next.
Yeah, just a question here.
Yeah, so my question is really just about like, so we are actually not changing the QoS class, right? So it should stay the same.
Yeah.
We just
we don't
allow
change.
setting
Stays
the
same.
value when it perceived as an increase of the QoS class.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about it is if changing to a value where if you started, from scratch with that value, you would have a higher QoS class, but it doesn't actually change the QoS class.
What's the reasoning to allow this one way increase versus the other way?
The reasoning is, so thinking about the guaranteed case, like if we allow a guaranteed pod to now be resized so that it's burstable, you're still having the QoS guarantees of a guaranteed pod, but it's now taking
I see.
I'm struggling to articulate this, but it's now behaving kind of like a burstable pod in terms of like how it's taking up resources on the node.
Yeah, so for example, like room score and other things, you are basically calculating based on the original guarantee class, but now your resource usage can be completely different.
Yeah.
Okay. The checkpoint, is this a net new checkpoint, or are we combining this with something else?
There's already there's already a checkpoint that's used for allocated resources and resize status. So this would use that same checkpoint mechanism. And then I'm also proposing adding limits in there as well, which is kind of a separate topic.
I see, yeah.
Tim, can we just simplify this? Okay, there's no QoS change and the class change, and they focus on other things, right? So we are based on the, like a womb score type of things. Maybe that will be simple. But I also say Manu have the comment. Is that possible confused? Okay.
Yeah, we can confuse NRI plugins because NRI plugins look at calculate the QoS class themselves, and then they can search for C group in different place and wrong place. So NRI plugins definitely will be affected. And I don't know whether we will need to pass QoS class explicitly after that. So NRI plugins know where to look. And my second comment was in the list I didn't find any mentions of change of API to like many usages of in-place update was to change it often, assuming that there will be no restart. So like ask to change without restart API. Is it something that we plan for beta, or you had got out of scope?
No, I looked at that and it requires changes at the runtime level. I think it's worth talking about that a little more. But I decided not to include that in the scope for beta.
Yeah, I believe cluster data scaling people believe that this is an API, and they will be running assuming that there is no restarts. So we may have this trouble.
I think with regular containers with at least containerd, I assume with cryo, no restart required. I don't think there's any conditions when it actually restarts. I know we're over time here. Itamar, do you have a short comment?
Yeah, just a small note that maybe dedicated CPUs is another thing to consider here, because raising QoS class might affect that.
Yeah, I echo the same concern. Allow the QoS class to change. I think it's better be more careful.
Okay. There's a few topics we didn't get to, so I'll pick this back up next week's meeting, and I'll revisit the QoS class changes before then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, team. This is tough topic, big, giant topic. Thank you. Take over and move forward.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next
Thanks.
week.
Yep.